This trading strategy has clear and easy to follow rules. It doesn't rely on any indicators, and I've backtested it on 5 years of data. Let's go over the strategy rules. Just a quick disclaimer first, this isn't financial advice and I'm not a financial advisor. This is purely a backtest to see how the strategy is performed over time. This is a London breakout strategy and you may already be familiar with variants of this, but these specific rules are backed up by historic price data. So here I'm on the hourly chart and I am on the pound-yen cross. Since this is a London breakout strategy, I need to make sure that the time zone is also set correctly. So down here I select London. Next I'm looking for the 9 a.m. candle. So that is this one here. And I begin this by defining my initial opening range. This is going to be between the hours of 4 a.m. and 8 a.m. inclusively. So I look for the low at 4 a.m. and I look for the high here at 8. And that defines my starting opening range. So I can extend that out, and this is where I'm going to be looking for breakouts. And specifically, I'm waiting for price to break out and then close above this range. So if it just wicks above it and then comes back and closes below, then I don't consider that a breakout. So in this case, the next candle at 9 a.m. gives me that breakthrough and closes above. So then on the next candle is where I open a trade. The stop loss just goes at the bottom of the range, and then I aim for a 1.5 take profit. So this trade took a few hours, but eventually it hit its take profit later on. I also noticed that quite often, once price breaks out, it will come back and retest this line. So another strategy might be to wait for that to happen and take entries on the retest. And this is the basic strategy. It works okay on its own, but there are some additional tweaks that I will make to improve it further. But before I do that, I said at the start that this strategy is backed by historic price data. This spreadsheet has 5 years worth of price data for the pound-yen cross. So I wrote a Python script to read that data and then get me some average values from it. Along the x-axis is the hour of the day. This is in the London time zone. And then I have these two charts. The top one shows the average volume for each of those hours, and the bottom one shows the average size of the candles. And what this tells me is in the early hours, especially 3, 4, 5, 6 a.m., the candles get a lot smaller, there's a lot less movement, and the volume also dies down. But then as soon as you get into 7 and 8 a.m., the candles get bigger and the volume increases. Afterwards, there's a bit of a lull, and then in the afternoon, about 2, 3 p.m., there's another burst of volume and price movement, which coincides with the US markets opening up. And I find it really useful to output this kind of information because it confirms the underlying logic of the strategy. Now that I understand the data behind the strategy, the rules can be seen more clearly in that context. I know that these early morning candles have low volume and small movement on average, which is why I select them for my opening range. I then extend that and wait for something to break through it, which happens on this 10 a.m. candle. So my entry comes in right after, stop loss at the bottom of this range, and then a take profit of 1.5 to 1. There is one additional factor that can make a big difference to this strategy, and it's shown in this example here. I get a breakout from the range, however, the breakout is too big, and the result is that if I was to take a long position here, the stop would be massive. So in a case like this, I would say that the breakout has already happened, and I wouldn't enter a trade. The way I determine that is by using the average true range, the ATR indicator. I can get the ATR value from here, and then I make sure that the size of this candle, if I take the high minus the low, is no greater than 2 times the previous ATR. If it exceeds that size, then I don't take that trade. Now I can run a backtest on the strategy and see how it actually performs. So I import all of my required libraries, and then I set some parameters for this backtest. It's going to be on the hourly time frame, the pound-yen cross, starting balance of 100, risking 2% per trade, and then I use the 9 a.m. candle as the open time. I did test other variants, but this one worked the best. And then I look back 5 hours from that to give me my opening range. So it's not the entirety of the Asia session, but it captures enough of the recent time. The trades will be taken in the long direction for now, but I will come back and test this for short trades as well. And then I set the time zone to London. After that, I load in all of that price data from my CSV file, and then I can calculate a bunch of different inputs. The important ones are the ATR, which I use for restricting the candle size, and then my opening range. So once I have all of those, I can generate trade signals. these are all the strategy rules defined as conditions. For long, I need the price to open below the range high and then close above the range high. So this gives me the confirmed breakout. Short is just a reverse of that same thing. And down here is where I restrict the candle size so that it can be no bigger than 2.5 times ATR and no smaller than 1 times ATR. So I want a decent breakout, not too big and not too small. So with that done, I can skip ahead into my backtest results. And down here, we can see the equity chart. So this is going back from 2020, a pretty steady upwards equity curve without really a lot of drawdown. So it looks really good. And if I look at the metrics, I've got a 48% annual return with only a 14% drawdown, a win rate of just over 50%. So 51 is okay, but we're taking a 1.5 to 1 reward to risk. So that gives the strategy a positive expectation over time. Now I can change this to short and rerun that. So longs were pretty profitable, but unfortunately the short performance wasn't that great. I also tested this on pound dollar and euro USD and a couple of others, but it didn't work that well there. The pound yen seemed to give me the best result. There are lots of modifications that can be made to this kind of strategy, so let me know your ideas in the comments. You can also post suggestions for other strategies that you'd like me to test. And if you've made it this far, then please take a second to like the video. It helps a lot.